So what I would say is invest in like a lavalier mic, which is a corded mic that clips on your lapel, and then from a camera perspective, take a couple GoPros and learn how to use them.
Hi, I'm Ed Marsh, host of the Industrial Growth Institute podcast. Every episode, I get to chat with somebody who's making a difference in helping industrial manufacturers grow their business across a wide variety of topics. And today, I'm so excited to be talking video with Chris Fox. Chris is formal bio, I'll give you. He's a content creator and a consultant in the manufacturing and engineering spaces, and he helps a bunch of different OEMs create content and the strategy around that content. I know him as a guy who knows more about making videos and machines than just about anybody else. And there's much more to his background that we're going to, hear from him today as we go through this conversation. So welcome, Chris, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation for sure.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny we're talking about video in form of conversation, but I guess some people will hear it as audio and some people will see it as video. And hopefully we can draw in the excitement of video, even though it's kind of just a back and forth conversation. But so that was your formal intro. But now, I mean, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, the it sounds like a pack of lots of things, and 10 pound to a 1 pound box type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I've been creating content in the manufacturing and engineering space for more than 10 years at this point. I gotta do the math. Um, but I started in UV polishing, and I just kind of moved through the world of manufacturing and marketing, and now I focused on helping companies create this content because so often there's a misunderstanding with how much content needs to be created, what it looks like. It can be intimidating, and I think that's where a lot of people like just like have the conversation where it's like, hey, let's talk through it. I talk to a lot of people that don't get ready to using these, but they need help, and that's kind of where that comes in. That's where I assist, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, obviously on your website you talk a lot about strategy, and during this conversation, I think we're going to get into this term content. We all say content, but what in the world does content mean? And I mean, enough of that term already. Let's get more granular with it. But backing up, I understand that you came from the heart of industrial America. You grew up in Oshkosh, and I'm sure that that played some role in the way you got involved in industrials and content creation. How did that kind of what was there a trigger there, or is that just pure happenstance?
Like sure happenstance. Yeah, and actually my dad worked at GM in Southern Wisconsin for he retired from there, and yeah, it's the industry is in my blood. But I have a degree in English and philosophy, and actually I graduated from college in '08. So prime job market, and actually I ended up working at Parks Department at a car dealership, and that's where kind of the melding of understanding communication with the complexities of what industry really is really kind of came to light for me. And I started to really understand that there's a gap. And then that all of a sudden I found myself with a VV publisher. And then like I said, the rest of my story is already there. We landed up in marketing and here we are. So yeah,
Yeah, but I
it's a
think you
but
left out a couple key chapters. I mean, tell me about Bourbonite.
oh yeah, well that's a oh, you did your research. That's awesome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then Metal Maniacs and Maximum Ink. We got to weave the whole thing together here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my license plate when I live in Arizona now, but when I was in Wisconsin, my license plate said heavy metal, and I go to a manufacturing facility and go, oh yeah, heavy metal, because we work with metal, and then I go to a counter, and they're like, yeah, and it's kind of this double entendre then at that point. But yeah, so obviously my communication isn't just relegated to the manufacturing space. I started a YouTube channel. I still get subscribers. I get a check from Google every 6 months or so for that. It's not that I don't really need videos for it anymore, but I did a Bourbon YouTube channel. And actually, it's kind of funny. I watched the worlds kind of collide. The company that I was working for when I was in corporate America working for a business, um, we did a bunch of videos and we used it in Practical Machinist for advertising, and then all of a sudden there was a whole comment thread about the Bourbonite because somebody recognized me in the feed, and it's pretty entertaining to watch those worlds collide. But yeah, so I'm a bourbon nerd. Obviously I'm a big heavy metal guy, and all that ties into not only not only the work that I do, but also the communication that I have with a lot of my clients. The fact that I know how to operate a machine, not well, but I know how to operate CNC machines. And that's the thing. I understand the complexities of dealing with these types of equipment that I can walk in and help them make content because I understand what I'm doing. I'm not just some writer off the street. I actually know the industry, and that's where a big part of my that history that you talked about really like blends into what I do.
Yeah, and I'd say more than that, you've also walked the talk. I mean, going back to Bourbonite, you got more than 20,000 subscribers and you've monetized it. So obviously it's not just creating videos, it's not just writing content, it's not just telling stories, it's figuring out how you can engage people with it. And that's true whether you're talking about music or talking about spirits or talking about machines, in my experience. I think that's the neat element that you bring.
Yeah, yeah. There's 100% there's a crossover there with understanding that. That's kind of how the organized started. Once YouTube was a thing, I don't even remember when I started in 2016, something like that.
I think it was
And
about 7 years was the first post. That would have been right around
yeah, something
2016.
like yeah. And the really what happened there was I YouTube was becoming a thing, but I was having a hard time convincing my employer at the time that we needed to regularly post videos. I was like, oh well,
They all get
I'm
it now. They're
yeah,
they're all on board
exactly,
now.
exactly. And so I was like, all right, let's see. Just YouTube was not new, but it was like, oh, she's bringing YouTubers and then all the other junk, right? And I was like, well, no, there's opportunity here, and so that's why I was like, well, let's just see what happens, and if it's great, apply that to my day job, and if it's not, well, I got to drink a bunch of bourbon, and in the end of the day, I got a couple of free bottles, I got some extra glasses, and I said, made a few $100 from Google. So it was a big time.
And only bourbon or rye or scotch or anything else?
I dabbled kind of into everything that was in the periphery, but it was very much like he tried to stay in the bourbon vein. And at
Got it.
one point, I tried to when I first moved to Arizona, I was like, yeah, let's talk tequila. 'Cause we're so close to Mexico, and then we're like, oh, let's go back to the bourbon. And like I said, now you have to with COVID and everything else. It was like, and then I was starting my own business, so I was pretty busy to be doing that on the weekend and stuff. So yeah, but it was definitely an interesting vein to go down, and like you said, it is proof in the pudding to kind of see the things that I'm drinking, I have made it more, and that is one
Sure.
of those things that, like, understanding, not just the algorithm, 'cause you're never gonna beat the algorithm, it's like playing stock market, like, understanding how you can navigate these things, and it doesn't require, you know, pages and pages of planning, you don't have to write a book of templates to make sure that this is done right. Like you just have to start creating it. And some of them were terrible, some of them were good. And at that point, like that has to be the nature of the content. I might digress a little bit here, but like
Are you going
some
to
of
tell me the
them,
story about when somebody came to you and said, "I want you to create a viral video for me"?
yeah, right, yeah. And then, that's just where you go, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the thing about creating content in general, especially in the manufacturing space, right? There are a lot of like creative individuals in our industry, but they don't recognize that they're creative. And so then they think that it has to come to this plan that's got bullet points and timelines, and then they have to lay all this stuff out. Sometimes that's necessary, right? Because you want to get a product that you're happy with. You see investing money and everything else, but it's also one of those things like sometimes you just gotta throw crap at the wall and see what sticks because that's part of the creative process. In creating content, the key part of it is create. You are developing something. If you're just doing something that's boilerplate, people are gonna smell it from a mile away. Even in our
Yeah,
industry.
for sure. But one of the things I also noticed about your background is that you haven't only created, you've also been an editor. You're a managing editor at manufacturing.net. You're a contributing editor at engineering.com. So those are big industrial names, but it's also that dreaded editor word, which is kind of different than the content creation. So how have you blended that? And what have you learned from being an editor that helps you create content?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, I I don't make a really outside reference, but my wife is a nut for Project Runway, and of course that's only the first reason. If she's watching it, I'm in the room. They harp on editing on that show all the time, and there really is something to be said about editing what you do creatively and understanding that it's a it comes from both sides. The If you're gonna be creative, you have to have that thick skin, but be prepared for people to hate it, for people to not like what you're doing. To that same end, you also have to be prepared that people are gonna love it and you may hate it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So
Right.
it's and that's where like that editing, like just understanding what you're looking for. A lot of times it comes down, like I said, you kind of have to throw stuff at the wall, and then you get pick through, and that's where the editing comes in, right? The creative part is let's splatter paint everywhere. The editing part is let's put some lines on the paper, and now you have something that it has some substance. You have something that you can use. And sometimes you can do a little more editing than creative, depending on what the goal of your content is. And I think that's probably the most important thing. Is like you have a direction, you have a goal. The rest of it is all valuable.
Yeah,
You
as
know,
long as the editing, one of the big problems I see many manufacturers have is they've got the idea that it's got to be perfect. They have to
right?
be a complete expert in a topic. The video or the text has to be perfect. 10 people are going to pick holes in it about some technical attribute and nothing ever gets published. And so, editing, yes, I completely agree, it's important. On the other hand, you can't let, as the saying goes, perfection be the enemy of the good.
Right. Right. And all that, and I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges in in this space when you do any sort of creative work is because we're dealing with, I mean, engineers and manufacturing experts are so much like, I don't want to say more than I think I know, right? I mean, it's a very scientific and logical approach. Like,
Right.
don't overspeak, right? Like,
Right.
I know all the things. Well, someone's gonna find something wrong with what you said, you know? Like, and I think I can appreciate that, and I understand that, and that's probably the real key to like really forcing the creative element to it, because that's almost too much of the editor thing. You really have to be willing to like, hey, you know what? Let's shoot this thing at a weird angle. Let's use a weird color in this logo, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's that
Or let's
well,
tackle a topic that we know is important, even though nobody ever asked us about it.
it can right, exactly, yeah, no, or we've already done it.
Right.
I get that a lot too. Like, we've already done this. Well, yeah, but you did it 8 years ago. Like, you can do it again. Like, it's
Yeah, or
okay.
20 years ago before there were servo drives or, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, yeah. Or even, and to that, and like even like um, using old assets. You know,
Right,
like here's an old like this picture is from 15 years ago. Like, I mean, we can take a new one.
right,
You know, I mean, I understand it might not be the photo perfect thing that came from you know, whatever studio that you paid to do it before. And that's okay. Like, and I think that's understanding, like you said, don't like the nut in the way, or don't the perfect in the way good enough.
right.
There really is a lot of that in the creative space, right? It's one of those things like, does it work? Perfect. Let's roll. And you can refine too, right? Like nothing, the internet is great. Is one, the internet is forever, so you gotta be careful. But two, it's always changing, right? It's always editing itself. And so then at that point, like, oh no, we didn't like the whatever, we paid a guy to make this logo and it was close, but not quite what we wanted. You can change it 6 months later. No one's gonna freak out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's true. You don't have to have a closet full of printed collateral that's never gonna get used and go in the dumpster. So, you got a lot more flexibility and the ability to change things quickly for sure.
exactly. And that's just how to walk there, right? Because you gotta you don't want to taint the brand, and there's the there, but definitely like I think I mean, our mutual acquaintance Andrew Davis. I mean, he and I talked a lot many years ago about marketing in general, and like the fact that safe marketing is rarely good marketing. You know,
And
and
Andrew is such an amazing guy because he's got an ability better than anybody else I've seen to make the completely unsafe feel relatively safe. He's able to sit down with an executive, get them to agree to do something that 2 days ago they would have thought was absolutely crazy and asinine, but then they're happy to do it and excited to do it with him. He's amazing that way.
yeah, and it really that I think our sector really could stand to embrace that. Just I mean, again, I understand there's challenges with investment and there's challenges with overhead. And I mean, you got to walk lines lightly, and you have to be a conglomeration of different manufacturers working together and different departments working together, and there's a lot of different things you got to navigate. But it is one of those things where sometimes it's okay to kind of push something weird out there, see how it
Uh,
does, and if it does great, you discover something. If it does bad, guess what? It's the internet. Everyone else can get it all.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I've picked up from your stuff over the years is you have to be willing to embrace some risk. You have to be willing to try different things. You have to be willing to do things that your sales reps who, have been there for 23 years and think that they've forgotten more about sales than you're ever going to know. The things they say are crazy. Well, sometimes you got to be willing to do it.
Right. Yeah, and if the um, oh shoot, now I remember the company, the carbon haulers. Are you familiar?
I'm not.
They did the squatting potty. Are you familiar with that?
I
They,
am. Yeah, I
they
have a
were a show.
granddaughter that's very proud of how she uses hers.
Yeah, and it's they were a Shark Tank, and they did well. And that, but then they had like a peter out in sales, and then they hired these guys, the Harvard brothers, and they did this whole bullshit. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, it's brilliant. You should probably link it somewhere. But it's like a 7 minute like comedic infomercial,
Wow.
and it's a unicorn literally pooping rainbow ice cream. It's ridiculous, and it's all those things where you like, this is kind of a serious topic, like, and they just embraced the fact that they were talking about poop, and it was brilliant, and it was also very like technical, and that's one of the things that really I kind of really latched onto because our industry is so technical,
Right.
and it doesn't need to be dropped. Like it's okay if you're perfectly in line, and like or you I was running into this like when I'm doing customer stories with folks. They're like, "Oh, let me clean this up real quick." But no, like let it be dirty. Like it shows that you're doing work. It shows that it's a real shop. If it's clean, I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, I just bought that."
All right. So
Okay,
so thinking of kind of clean and formulaic and vanilla, what do you say when a company comes to you and says, "Oh, we're so excited. We want to do some video, and let's start with the 3-minute profile video about our company and how we started 73 years ago, and we've got a 50,000 square foot facility." Do you say yes? Are you willing to start there? What's your response?
I short answer is yes. I do say yes, but a lot of times why I go into those conversations thinking is or communicating is that we need to make sure that it's less about my history wasn't about the company. It's more of the spirit of the company, right? You're selling the organization. Why? Right? And that's that Simon Sinek, right? Like you want to know the why of this organization. Someone will watch it if it has a story. And that's the biggest thing. And to that end too, when someone comes to me and says, I want a 3 minute video, it's like, let's not worry about the 3 minutes. If it takes 90 seconds, it takes 90 seconds. If it takes 10 minutes, it takes 10 minutes, right? I did a story a few years ago, in thing. Do you want me to, is it okay if I mention companies or do you not want me to mention companies?
Yeah. I mean, if they're okay with you describing the work that you've done with them, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So I did a video with Kino a few years back. And it was with a gentleman in California. This nice old guy. He's originally from Vietnam. And he's actually a Vietnamese refugee. Came on a boat. I don't remember what he was obviously doing the Vietnamese work. Um and he got here and he put $10,000 on a credit card, bought a machine, and now he has a shop where I something like 140 different like big CNC machines,
Wow.
right?
What an
And
inspiring story.
oh, it's brilliant, and the whole that's one of those ones where it's like I walked in not really knowing how much story was gonna be there, but once we sat down, it's like this story is far bigger than just the fact that he's using these machines to build semiconductor parts,
Right.
right? But it tells that story that like, look, this is the American dream, right? This
Absolutely.
guy's a refugee. He comes here, he starts a business on a credit card, and now he runs this shop. He literally owns a mountain in California. You know what I
Wow.
mean?
Wow.
It's really like how this guy came to be. And that was one of the things of like both myself and my contact with the organization. We were both like, "This is it. Like,
Hmm.
just let him talk." And then of course, obviously, you had to edit it down and you tweak and stuff. But then there was so much confidence that derived out of that because the guy was just an interesting dude, and he just happened to use their machine. You know, and
But
but
what a
that's
great
the
example, because the essence of his background doesn't change the plating on the parts that he's making. And so for
right,
companies that have this idea that it's all about the technical specs in their product, that's a
right.
perfect example of why that's not the case. The story makes a difference.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and story completely periphery to not the fact that he's buying their machines,
Right.
right? But what it tells you is it validates him as a person in this industry. As
Right.
someone who's like, look at what this guy did.
Right.
I can do that too, right? And that's where that story has a lot of value.
Now, on the one hand, you're an artist. On the other hand, you spent a lot of your career working under deadline as a journalist. So I know we've kind of danced around this topic of perfect versus done, or however you want to call it. But how do you balance the artistic inclination with the, hey, we got to wrap it up and get on to the next
Well, like, explaining to learn is probably to allow some to post some time. No, it's
thing?
no, it is there is definitely a give and take with that. And it's always tricky too because with my clients, I I never was to get one, right? But I it's definitely one of those things where it's like knowing where the deadline is
Right.
and filling that time properly, right? It's unfortunately with the creative process, right? You can't force it, and if you force it, you can tell.
Right.
Right? And so I think the key to any of that is always just like making sure you have all of right? It doesn't have to be a year. It doesn't have to be 6 months, but making sure that you give you and your creative team or whoever is working on this thing, making sure you have that buffer of time so that when genius strikes 6 hours before the deadline, you at least have something ready to go. You're not waiting for that genius to strike, right?
Right.
There's a process to get there, right? And
So then part of that is also staying ahead, having content in the can, whether it's public, a text to be published or video to be uploaded or whatever the case may be.
absolutely, yeah. And to be honest with you, that's part of the reason why lately, I used to try to produce stuff on LinkedIn way more, and honestly, lately I haven't had time. I find that's because my that buffer with stuff that was in the can versus stuff that I'm working on
Right.
has closed, and so now it's like, oh no, I should probably post something. I mean, I got a lot of interesting stuff just kind of floating, just haven't used it,
Right.
and again, that's some of that too, where it's like the editing part, right? I have the creative thing done. Okay, now I need to, take that nugget and polish it up so I can use it as content somewhere.
Right. Now, you mentioned LinkedIn. I know one of the things that you've got some good insight into is where it's appropriate, particularly in terms of video, where it's appropriate to publish it versus, not just dropping a link somewhere else. Tell me about that.
Hey, that's a lot of no, I mean, we work in an old school industry, right? So and I actually I talked with I gave a speech with the NCMA years actually right before COVID, and it was the funniest thing. I'm actually TikTok in a room of manufacturing experts, and they all get I mean just dead stare from 95% of them. I'm a can, I
Right.
get it, but I think the thing to really recognize is like a lot of folks are really focused on getting those needs, right? Or getting that and justifying the value of content. And that's great because you need to do that, right? Leverage it. Because you're spending money on it. You spend time and effort to create
Sure.
this thing. But the real opportunity, you're not going to get the same reach if you're posting a link to a landing page that then has a video. Like that video's not going to watch, right? And the algorithm does not like links. They don't want people leaving LinkedIn. They don't want people leaving Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. So the real opportunity there is making sure that you post natively to those platforms. And really, it's not difficult, right? I mean, especially like most of these platforms allow you to post longer content anyway, but filling away, making sure that all you can is use somebody that can be clocked in, And then at that point, you push it wherever you need to push it out, or even slice it up in little tidbits. It doesn't have to make you don't have to have a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, I
Like
was gonna ask, there's some great AI-driven tools now that let you drop in a YouTube link, for instance, and it will
mhm,
automatically pull out 30-second clips using AI with captions and everything else, and that makes it easy to post.
exactly, and that's really like the opportunity there, right? Like the core of the content is there. Okay, so now those social platforms, it's all about, and unfortunately, it's about pushing as much out as often as possible, right?
Right,
And with regularity. If you don't use regularity, you kind of fall off,
right,
or if your regularity is kind of sporadic, like you make one post, yeah, you might get a ton of traffic, and then it can't figure out on the second one. But
right,
if you do it for 10 days in a row, you start to see some substantial gains,
right,
and that's when you stack those days like that, then you have the ability to really get some actual reach through the content. But you have to have content, and that's the hard part, right? Is if you're spending all this money and time to make one video, and you need to literally to bits and pieces at it.
right.
Like we're in screenshots. Like
Sure,
that's super
absolutely.
valuable.
So you mentioned TikTok, I mentioned LinkedIn. I have not found a channel that really is successful at reaching a wide variety of traditional manufacturing industry contacts. I'd say LinkedIn is probably the best, but a third of them, have no profile. A third have a profile that they set up 15 years ago and they haven't updated, and then a third are active with it. What do you find is best?
Uh, it's probably like it. I mean, that is the place. What I actually enjoy, like how I've seen LinkedIn change over the years. I remember, now probably looking at 8 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that. And with, oh, look, so and so's active on LinkedIn, he must be looking for a job. That's not a thing anymore, right? Like
Right,
people are active. That is a place for professionals to communicate in a professional way.
right,
And
right,
even every once in a while, you'll see some of the more often than not, it's political stuff, but the stuff that just doesn't belong on LinkedIn, you'll see it creep in. It dies pretty quickly
right,
because it just doesn't belong there, right? And there is some value on outside the platforms other than LinkedIn, but unfortunately, LinkedIn is a place where if you're going to do anything that's remotely technical, that's where it belongs. No question. The other places, well, I always call it the machine corner, right? Like chicks flying, or you got sparks, or
right,
anything that's like, ooh, that across the networks, right? And that's kind of where the flash belongs, right? It'll what I've noticed is stuff that that is just as flashy as will perform late on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, that performs the same as anything else on LinkedIn.
hmm,
So it's kind of an interesting, like, it still has value on LinkedIn, but it doesn't hit the pop that it
right,
does the other places, right?
right.
And
S-
those other places the algorithm is defying to like shock, right? Like, oh, look at
Sure,
this, I'm gonna watch it, and then you keep moving, right? It's
right.
quick and dirty and move on.
So quick and dirty move on. That's the way people often think of sales. But I know along the way you worked at the Help Desk Institute, and so I'm sure that you've got a perspective on how video and content also helps with aftermarket and customer success, not just new lead generation. How often do people approach you to talk about that?
It's interesting. It's always on the um, it's always in the way in the conversations, right? But yeah, when it's like I see it more often in the type of content that is directed towards existing customers,
Hmm.
right? And that's kind of you had mentioned it before. That's part of the challenge when people come and say, "Hey, we've got people asking about X, Y, Z, right? So let's do videos about X, Y, Z." And it's like that. Absolutely, if you have people asking for it, yes. But also, it's like, hey, have your guys in the shop noticed this problem? It's not showing weakness to show how to fix something,
Right.
or it's not showing, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of value in saying, like, hey, these, I don't know what I mean, I don't know, pick a thing, right? These machines that's been next to doesn't work quite the way we wanted it to, so you need to do this every once in a while.
Right.
or you grease this wheel. The manual says X, you should do it 10 times a day. You should maybe do it five, because otherwise you run into this issue.
Right.
Like that is providing that expertise that a lot of times, like salespeople often provide, like if they're not good salespeople, like you said, bring hurting get out of the way. If they're mixed salespeople, right, there's someone you can call and be like, hey, there's a problem here, right? Content
Yeah.
that can,
It amazes me how many companies miss the opportunity to have a knowledge base.
yep,
Yeah, okay,
exactly.
I understand there's unique questions, you can't answer every one, but the Pareto certainly applies there. And for
Mhm.
somebody who's doing maintenance in second or third shift and isn't going to get one of your people on the phone right then, if they can find the answer in the knowledge base, that's huge.
Well, yeah, and it's crazy to see the crossover with what professional manufacturing and DIY content,
Hmm.
right? There is so much that like they like here's a machine and there's I like whatever I have an issue that the spindle's out too foul. Uh-oh, I don't know why. Like nothing happened. You didn't crash. I don't understand. They're gonna go to the internet. They're gonna go to YouTube, right? If you create that content, they'll find you.
Right,
And even if it isn't the same machine, you are now a trustworthy source. And I think that's the other big thing about that technical content. It's not just technical stuff about your machine or about your product, right? Like, hey, here's this. I ran into this with a little holly, and it's like here's a weld tool. And it's like great. What about like all the abrasives that you guys use? Oh, we don't want to talk about brand. It's okay. Don't talk about brand. Let's just talk about how like what are you doing here and why?
right,
And helping folks that don't maybe aren't as professional, but they're looking for that opportunity.
right,
Guess whose tools you're going to buy when they're
right,
low,
for sure. Yeah.
and then there's the old uh with the old content strategy from like John Deere, I think it was John Deere, way back when, like when they were just giving farmers magazines,
Right.
right? That
Yeah.
was like
So
really,
I think lately I'm hearing that more and more called pre-awareness content, where
yep, you're
it's
right.
not content that's appropriate for a lead. I mean, it's not a lead. Your salespeople have to understand that's not a lead. It's somebody that wants to learn. It's somebody that you can be a resource to. It's not
Mhm.
somebody to put in your sales forecast for this quarter or anything like that, but build a
Right.
relationship.
Like, and that's where that like you don't want to gate that content.
Right.
Right, because that's not like that if somebody's looking for that, then they got put their email address in like, well, I'm good, And obviously our in our space, I mean, it's more complex than, just something random that you might be looking for on the internet. I mean, it might be related to coding, it might be related to something in CAD or whatever. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Right.
In just showing that like, hey, we as a company deal with these things as well.
Exactly.
Like it's and now like not only does it help educate them, and like I said, there's to build that trustworthiness, but it humanizes the organization. Because
Right.
again, we're a manufacturer, we're about machines in one way or another. They actually like put a soul behind what's going on in a company. It's actually really helpful, right? I mean, there's a real opportunity to like explain who you are as an organization just by doing that kind of stuff.
All right. So having talked about humanizing something, now let's do a 180-degree turn, and we got to talk about AI.
Yeah,
So your thoughts on Sora and AI, and how is AI impacting particularly video content, but also the content strategy stuff that you work on now?
yeah. It's I don't know right now if it's affecting the strategy all that much. But definitely like the actual like the artistic end of it. What I find really interesting is how the AI organizations are like chasing down the creative end of things. And I think it's because that's some of the most expensive stuff out there, right? I mean, like we don't talk about movies making $1 billion for no reason, right?
Right.
Like it's expensive to make this stuff, especially if you're gonna make it good. But part of that challenge is there's a lot of unknowns right now with AI. The other part of that too is it only has certain things to reference.
Hmm.
Right? If you search Google and you can't find a video or even not even a video, but just content
Right.
on one of these things, AI is not gonna be able to do that. Because that if any is AI is great, right? And that's part of that like it might help a little bit in closing some of that skills gap, that we could deal with for what 20, 25 years.
Hmm.
Especially now that a lot of those old school machinists and operators and stuff are starting to retire. They get a lot of knowledge crammed into their brains that they don't even know that they need to share,
Right.
right? But the AI closing that gap is there, but it's not gonna finish.
So
And
have you used it at all? Have you created any B-roll, for instance, using some AI generated video?
I had not created any B-roll, and to be honest with you, the main reason is because any sort of B-roll that I use is so specific.
Got it.
It can make me AI just doesn't even there, right? Like, I mean, here I want to show a 3D printer, making, with like this recorder. Okay, cool. It doesn't understand because it doesn't have any reference to a 3D
Right.
printer making this, right?
Right.
And unfortunately, that's kind of that is the stopgap
Makes
for the
sense.
AF, right? Like
Right.
uh, the opportunity there is the fact that we've had access to the world's knowledge since the internet. AI can scan it in an instant, and
Right.
that's the difference, right? But if it doesn't exist out there, it won't until it's created.
Right.
And
Makes sense.
so that's where like B-roll stuff like, okay, yeah, I need a shot of panning through a cornfield because we're talking about someone's making tractors. Okay, yeah, it can do that if you don't
Right.
want to go out and get that shot. But if you want, I want a Haas machine making, 5-inch diameter holes. We're gonna bore out 5-inch diameter holes on this specific part. It's not that fun. Like it's not gonna
All
exist.
right. So if we're stuck, at least for now, creating it ourselves, there's good news for folks like you and me that advise others on how to do it. Um, so talk to me. How does a company know when they should hire their own videographer, when they should hire their own editor, when they ought to bring in somebody from outside? Is it based on revenue? Is it based on complexity of project? Is it based on the frequency of content creation? How do you help somebody think through that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a $1 million question, right? Because the I'm just saying how it works. That's nice. Like, 'cause at the end of the day, it really what it comes down to is the you have to look at it from the lens of reading, right? What are they going to care about, and what are they not going to care? Right? Technical content. A lot of that can be shot internally with somebody who doesn't really have a whole lot of training. But, and this is a big but, if it's lit wrong, it doesn't have
Right.
to be like sexy lighting, right? But it has to be like, like right now I have my windows open. I just moved into this house. I don't got window coverage, so my window's blasting my face right now. Like this is too blown out. So if I wanted to show you content, it's not gonna you're not gonna see the nuances of part, and then also editing.
So will you go in and will you train companies, staff? If somebody hires a videographer or has a part-time videographer in the marketing department, will you go in and spend some time training them?
I know folks that I've worked with where we have a conversation about like how do we navigate you know, the like schedule specifically. Because a lot of times, unfortunately, unfortunately, but you need a subject matter expert,
Hmm.
but then you also need someone to go, and that's minimum, right? So at that point, you got two people. So if you have a small company, if you got a small 20-person business, taking two people out of the mix is not super easy to
Right.
do.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so there's a lot of conversation about like, okay, well, how do we navigate this? How do you, and my recommendation in that sense is always to like hire me or hire somebody like me, right? Because if you go on to like one of the outsourced like Fiverr or whatever,
Right.
yeah, you can find somebody that'll edit video for you, but it's probably going to be more work because you got to sit there and hold their hand through the
Right.
whole thing.
Right.
At that point, you might as well learn how to use Premiere yourself and just make it go,
Right.
right? They might not color correct it and everything else, and it'll look nice, but if the content doesn't deliver, that it's not worth it.
All
And
right.
I
So
love it. But
so tell us about your ideal client. I mean, what's the profile of the kind of company that you naturally fit really well with working with them?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like the folks, what I find is that the folks that I look best fit are the ones that they know what they want in it, but they're willing to get there however they need to.
Hmm.
And that's like, I mean, I know that's super wrong and like, I
They're open to
know,
advice.
yeah, exactly,
Which
exactly.
is and that's tricky in the industries that you and I work in because there's so many amazingly creative and intelligent people who invent crap. And because they've invented it and built it and created a factory around it and a company around it, now they assume that they can invent and build anything.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes maybe digital marketing isn't the best thing for them to try to invent and build.
right, right. And then that's exactly it. Like the and you know what I'm saying, like they know it all because that again, in our industry, they don't. Nobody says they know it all. We're all very much just like I know it to this point,
Right.
right? But the a big part of that is understanding that like they're not just outside of England, but those of us who have done it before understand there are nuances that you may not even recognize, right?
Hmm.
And what I mean, they was like, right? That is huge. Another really, really good one is audio, folks. All the time, well, that's been enough. I was like, no, no, no. Like, we need to get a better mic here. We can't just use the mic that's on the phone.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Right.
Or like after the fact, right? Like I had to, oh, can you do a voiceover? It's like, I'm gonna do that. That's cool, but I'm gonna send you a piece of my equipment. You're not gonna do it yourself on your iPhone.
Right.
You can do it, but I can tell the difference. And obviously, I'm an expert at it, so like, of course, my ears a little on the fight. But most people are why does this sound different?
Right.
And then it's distracting. And now your content is taking away from what you're trying to do.
So what size company do you normally work with?
Generally, for the most part, I work mostly with OEMs.
Okay.
So we're talking, it like really varies to be honest with you, but you usually 200 employees or more on
Okay.
the design.
A-
Um,
And do you typically work on a project basis, or do you have some sort of an ongoing relationship where every month you're creating video with them? How do you do that?
but I mean, depending on the client's needs.
Okay.
I have clients where I have retainers with them, and it's basically like I have an understanding I'm going to travel so many times a year with them, and that sort of thing. And I use this project per project, and at that point, it's like, oh, well, what do we need to get out of this? Oh, we want to, 2 videos and a social to
Hmm.
okay, cool. And then we're working at it. Well, most of my clients these days, that's they like the piecemeal until they realize that, oh, if we get onto a schedule, it actually gets cheaper and easier,
Right.
right?
And
So,
and it works better because you mentioned earlier the need for consistency in order for it to all work.
no, that's exactly it. And that consistency is always like in minor details too, right? Like not just you know not just creating the content, but like the difference in the color that you have, type
Hmm.
of shots that you have, right? Like my eye is different than some other videographers,
Right.
right? So the type of equipment that I use, right? I use it in bowl and a tripod. Some people use hand and you know what I mean, like and there's not they're all good ways to do it. But if you do half a dozen videos over here with this type of stuff, and you do half a dozen over here, you're gonna see a difference. And
Right.
that there's a lot of value in like working on the same thing over and over together with that consistency. Plus things like assets, like branding assets and stuff.
Hmm.
I can tell you when I see folks switch because all of a sudden, and you get this is me, but it's like all of a sudden the overlays on the a different corner,
Right.
or they're off, they're not quite as low or quite as high as they were before. And if you're watching a number of videos in a row, all of a sudden, it's like, what happened?
Right.
And you're gonna like one and the other no matter what. And
Right.
so then at that point, it's like, no matter what, you're like, oh, where did it consistent? There's no up, is it? She's like, oh, yeah, this is what it is. Draws attention.
What's the coolest machine you've ever shot?
Ooh, but mm, I don't know about okay, so I've been shooting a lot lately.
Okay.
So this has changed over time. Like, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, I went to INTS and I remember who it was. Some company had a machine that did 6 different things all in one, right? It was a vertical lathe, and then it had three clean elements, and it had a welding element, and like that time I was, whoa, look at this thing. These days, I look at that and I go, that's pretty impractical for everybody but like one person. So it's not as cool of a machine anymore. But one of the machines that I've really been intrigued by lately are EDM machines, and because I know a lot of my background's in CNC mills and lathes, and so when I see EM work, it's like black magic. It's like they're pushing stuff with these machines and it comes out. It's like I mean, I understand how it works, but I don't understand what happened. Like, how is this? How do you have this finish? And you have the clerks where it's like, they put the two pieces together and they line up perfectly, and it's a perfectly smooth piece. And
Right.
like, it's amazing to see that stuff actually come out of a machine. It really is cool to. So if I had to pick one right now, it's definitely like seeing EDM machines. And specifically, I saw a horizontal EDM, which is kind of weird, a horizontal wire EDM, and it's for a very specific. Again, it's a very specific, unique type of space. It's very much in like high end, finite medical,
Hmm.
but it was really cool to watch this thing operate. And it's got to be on, its own concrete pad that's like 6 feet buried in the
Wow.
ground, just so it doesn't have vibration and all that. And it's so precise that like you can't go touch it, right? Oh, the temperature changing in the room, that
Right.
kind of thing. So yeah, it's always the more expensive ones that are the coolest, right? Like,
But everything's not always a sexy machine, and I'm sure you make some amazing videos that tell amazing stories about what some people might consider to be just kind of boring industrial products. So how do you tell a story about something where the machine itself doesn't make it easy to tell a story?
yeah. Well, like we said, that is where that storytelling element is absolutely like. I did a video a couple of years ago with a company that basically all he did was CNC bend. And I mean, it's interesting when they go to a trade show and they've got all these elaborate things like that. What was doing that? It's like I
Right.
need a 45 and a 90, and I just need to push through 100 of these every day. Not like you said, not that sexy. But what's interesting about that is where those things go, and that's where that story element comes in.
Hmm.
And then once you have that story like basis, it not only is about like, oh yeah, we're making this 90 45-degree bend, but it's also look how many, right? And then all of a sudden that creates kind of an interesting element to like you don't even realize how big some of these spaces are.
Right.
And that's where that kind of shock and awe that would come from like, oh, this is on a NASA space shuttle. That's a woo, but also like it's like, holy crap, this is in every single house, and it
Right.
probably was made in this little shopping device thing,
Right.
you know? And so that's where some of that like telling that story really does accentuate the value of not only content, but what you're trying to sell,
Sure.
right? And really pushing it forward.
So when you want to learn, where do you go? Do you go to B&H's YouTube channel? Are there specific blogs that you read? Are there podcasts you listen to? What do you do?
To be honest with you, I'm guilty because I'm a video guy, right? YouTube is an amazing resource. And I think more and more companies are getting to the point where they're understanding that not only, I mean, obviously Google is like the search engine, right? But I think a lot of people are starting to understand that YouTube is the same. And
Well, and
they're
YouTube is
really,
Google as well.
before attacking, right? Technically, what's it, Alphabet, right? The
Right.
parent company. So they're not the same, but they're not the same. The, um, but using video to explore not only helps you understand what you're looking for and researching it, but it also helps you understand it perfectly, right? Whereas if you're just looking for, let's say, a white paper, they're great if you're looking for something very specific and very, honed in. That there's a lot of value in that if that's what you're looking for.
Right.
But if you don't really know, and there's a lot of that in this space, it's the unknown unknowns,
Right.
right? And when you watch a YouTube video, it's like, oh, okay, I understand how to do that. I didn't even realize that I should probably time this over here before I do that. I didn't even realize there was a bolt there, or whatever that might be.
All right.
That's what a lot of that.
So here's a critical question about podcasts and YouTube videos. What speed do you watch or listen at?
it's it's actually it really varies.
Yeah.
When if it's something that's very technical, just standard, one X. If it is something that's chatty like me, and there's a lot of I want to call it fluff because I can evaluate what I can.
Absolutely.
There's some fluff, right? Um, you know, word. And that's unless I'm doing all the improvement stuff and you got somebody with a cell phone and they're gonna talk for 10 minutes, then
Right.
it's 2 times speed until we get to a lead.
Right. Right. Got it. Um, when you're, I assume that in some, I shouldn't say assume, I've watched some of your videos where you have a person standing in front of a machine talking about the machine. So when you've got a person and a machine, who's the star?
100% the person. Every
Okay.
single time.
All
Yeah,
right.
no question. And that's the there is
But
obviously
but
this
but they probably think the machine is the star. And in fact, many of them are probably hesitant to be on camera themselves. And so how do you downplay that for them and still make them the star?
the it's pushing the value of your knowledge about the machine, right? Because a machine by itself, it's just a machine, right? And it's kind of that, it's the old CNC adage. It's like the machine only knows what you tell it, right? A machine is nothing without a human operating in some basic way, right? Whether it's programming or operating a boat or whatever. But absolutely the star of the show is this person and the knowledge that they are putting out there. Because if they're not putting it out there, if it's just a voiceover, what happens is you are literally just staring at a box,
Right.
right? There's some gears and bolts and mechanisms, right? The and that kind of tells the tale, like more so like why our industry has been so slow to kind of get in video in general. Is yeah, you get me. Engineers are not well known for being very outgoing people. Now,
Right.
granted, I know plenty of very outgoing engineers. I mean, honestly, anybody that I know that works at Autodesk, they're all very outgoing. But for whatever reason, engineers overall are not super outgoing people, and
So
so that
so do you have exercises you do beforehand to limber them up and get them comfortable with the camera and all of that?
like, well, and that's one of the things I kind of pitch a lot of my potential clients is the fact that I know the industry, I've operated machines. So we have a conversation about the machine, right? And that happens a lot more so, let me rephrase that. Less so when I'm doing like a technical video with a company, but more so when we're doing like say a customer story.
Mhm.
Right? Because a lot of times with the customer story, they'll stick me out in the shop with the operator, which is awesome because that operator has like the most in-depth knowledge about that machine or that work cell or whatever,
Right.
but they have no media training at all. Right? It's like I always joke about when they do the race body with their hands, like I don't know what and it's like it's okay. Like, look, ask me those questions, but then we have a conversation. And that's why usually when I do customer stories, even if we ask their question, and even if sometimes my clients there, sometimes they send me on my own. But that's why I always say, like, let me start you
Mhm.
because I will stand next to the camera and we're talking, right? You're not talking to this piece of glass because for some reason it's the glass that intimidates people, right?
Right.
But it's we are having a conversation. We are talking through. You're telling me like you tell a customer. And at that point, I'm knowledgeable enough that I can ask the question like, wait. So you know again 2000s, why?
Right.
Wait, they all of a sudden they click and they're like, oh, well, and then you can almost watch it change on
Right.
camera.
Right. Makes
And
sense.
that's why like anytime I do one of those interviews, I always have people introduce themselves. We do the whole thing, and then I have them introduce themselves again. Because at the end, they're like, oh yeah, you're cool. I get it. I understand what's going on. You're a cool guy, like
It's kinda like when you get your blood
oh,
pressure taken when you first go into the doctor's office, at least mine is always high. They call it white coat syndrome. So we take
yeah.
it again at the end after we've had a conversation, and it's a whole lot different.
Yeah, exactly, 100%, and that is exactly what it is, right? It's all about anticipation. It's getting the nerves out,
Right.
right? And I mean, and some of obviously my music career, I think whatever you want to call that, right? That's a point on stage for the bartender and my mom, right? Like that's
Right.
that's not that's like how do you know to be real, but the other names don't have, but 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 playing music on stage has helped me understand that like you have to get past that anticipation because the anticipation is the worst part. Once you're there and you're in front of the camera, here's where you go,
Right.
right? And that's the key. If you always let the anticipation out, you're worried about the next thing. When you're worried about the next thing, it's always going to be a hard conversation. Whereas if you're just thinking on the fly, and that's why more often than not, I'll always try to get people to go down a rabbit hole a little bit
Mhm.
when we have those interviews.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, tell me about why you do this. Let's talk about like, yeah, why did you make it that way? Like, oh, I tweaked this thing over there. Oh, that's cool. Why? What did you
Right.
do there?
Right.
And then next thing you know, it's in a whole spiel. We might not be using the interview, but everything after that is smooth.
Sure. Sure. So thinking about kind of the arc of the story, and I think about the what I'm not in your business, so I'm probably using the wrong language, but I would call it a life cycle of the product. So how it's made and why it's made that way, and then maybe some sort of an explanation of a demo and kind of lab sorts of content showing how it works, and then showing it in a customer's facility in real production, and then showing the outcomes. You mentioned a warehouse full of the parts that have been spit out at high speed, but even more than that, how those you said, for instance, one of those may be in every house. So actually seeing it in the house and seeing the house after house after house along the block on the street, wherever the outcome is, the fact that it helped the company build the house faster or cheaper or safer or stronger or whatever the case may be. Do you am I imagining it, or is there an arc of a story to tell across that whole thing as well?
Yeah, well, and I think one Texas fan is, I mean, the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. What's interesting about it too is each of those things that you mentioned, each of them, like, those both have got all your own piece of content
Sure,
as
absolutely.
well, right? And you almost thought like, yeah, here's the product, right? That is, I mean, that is almost a whole marketing campaign or the life cycle of the product, right?
Right.
Because it really provided insight to not only the value and quality of a product, but also like, look, it's being used, it's real, it's
Right.
making stuff, you know?
Yeah,
And that's
I often say to companies, nobody gets out of bed excited in the morning about calling you up to buy your machine. They would
right.
rather not have to deal with it. They've got so many other things. They'd rather not have to go through the process of buying another machine, getting capital approved, doing the technical research, getting
Mhm.
everyone to sign off on it. It's a pain in the neck. What they're interested in is the outcome. The fact that it runs all night long without without only 30% efficiency during third shift, or that it doesn't break down when the Walmart trailer is waiting outside to take the load off, or whatever the case may be. It's the outcome that they're interested in.
Right, right. And like you said, you kind of laid out that whole like one thing on it. The key to remember with all that is nobody, except from maybe people like you and I, but for the most part, nobody is gonna watch that in order,
Right.
right? Like
You're not
it's
going to
gonna,
sit down and binge it.
yeah, 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 exactly. Right. Oh, not with serious.
Right.
What'll happen is you catching with flashy custom install. Like, if one of the race car companies using this part, cool. Okay, well now it's like, oh look, these parts are being made on these machines. These machines are being used to make parts for every automotive company in the country. Cool. Oh look at how they're made. We use high end cast iron, and we don't, you know what I mean? Like that cycle jumps around, and that's like you have to have all of it there. Whereas if it's like in our industry more than I've ever seen anywhere else, if it isn't there, people are like, well, not what aren't they showing us?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's
That's
like
like not going to the trade show. We haven't gotten decent leads from the trade show in the last 10 years, but we're going to be there just because we don't want somebody talking about us.
100%. And I watched it happen last year or 2 years ago at IFTS, right? Like the the companies that weren't there, people were like,
Yeah.
well, and it's like, no, they're doing fine. Like, look them up. Like,
Right.
they're publicly traded in Germany or wherever. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
they're doing fine. They just don't want to spend $1.5 million on a movie each year.
All right. How about speaking of spending money? How about you spend the money on the video? Then what's your guidance in terms of extracting written content from that? Whether it's a couple blog posts about it or a case study that you take the outputs of those interviews and work into a case study or something like that. What do you recommend companies do in terms of trying to get written content out of video?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, but that's part of the reason why, um, whenever I'm done with a video project, I send a little hard drive, to my clients. That's a business expense, right? I send that out, it's on forever. Like, I always send all of the raw footage off to them. And then at that point, I was recommending, like, hey, like, listen to the whole interview because there's a lot that ends up on the cutting room floor,
Right.
right? And some of it's good, some of it's junk, and that's okay, right? Like, some of it banter between me and your interviewee or
Sure.
whatever. But there's a lot of opportunity to pull out quotes, not only in like the edited version, but also pull out quotes that like maybe were as flashy for or tied into the story and you edit it out with video. But they absolutely work in a case study where it's like, hey, anytime I do a video, if someone mentions a percentage, like, oh, it increased productivity by 20%, I mean, absolutely, that we shoehorn that in there because that's
Right.
super like, that's a key point. But sometimes there's other little nuances to those things that you don't necessarily get or don't necessarily fit in a video. Or if you can put context around it in a case study or whatever, there's a lot of value in that. And a lot of times there is absolutely opportunity to just re-listen to an interview and then pull out quotes, reuse them. The other part too is even if you don't have time to like listen to like an hour and a half long interview, if you just use the content of the 3 to 5 minute customer story, pull out quotes, and then tell the rest of their story in a case study. I mean, that has a lot of value, not only for people who just would rather read than watch, also
Right.
best as well. I mean,
Yeah, and it feels to me like that's an amazing opportunity with the AI tools. Drop
mhm,
the video in, get a transcript
yeah,
created, have AI do a digest of it. You can tell it you want it to pull out specific points, any numbers or statistics or mentions of this term or whatever the case may be. And so a lot of that research work can be done for you very efficiently in the background.
yeah, well, yeah, 100%. And there too, like use then I see you need to review it, right? But
Of
yeah,
course.
pushing through the AI, that gives you a solid structure.
Right.
And now you can tweak it and make sure that and I have used what is it, the ChatGPT
Hmm.
to kind of give me a baseline for stuff while I've done things like that in the past.
Right.
And it's invaluable. The tricky part is making sure they comb through it. So it probably I mean depending on how rare you are, it might be as much work to just write it yourself as it would, but there is a lot of value in having that baseline and saying like, oh yeah, but it didn't quite work this way, or it doesn't know what
Right.
it's talking about here.
Or even
Let's
just have it extract the details for you and then you write it from scratch, but
What
without
give you
having to
bullet
sit and watch
points.
the whole video.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, listen, you have to listen to an hour-long interview. Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Now, I know one thing I hear from many machine companies is, "Oh, well, that would be great, but our customers will never let us in to ask questions or make a video or whatever." I'm sure you hear that, and I'm sure you've got some advice. I mean, I always tell them, "Don't apologize. Just say, 'Hey, we'd love to do this. What do we need to do to make it happen?'" As opposed to, "I'm sure that there's probably rules and you maybe can't let us in, but maybe someday if the sky is purple, you'd be able to let us take a video." Well, of course, they're gonna say no. So my approach is to not apologize, to be presumptive, polite and professional, but be presumptive. What do you recommend to people?
No, 100%. And that is exactly it. And I mean, it's kind of a spin off of it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
Right.
It's kind of the same vein, right? Um, Obviously, there's a lot of companies, especially in medical and aerospace, but walk those lines real finely, right?
Sure,
But
of course.
a lot of times, and this is kind of where a lot of my clients will introduce me to their customer before the customer even says yes.
Right.
Because it's like, look, I'm in there. I understand. Tell me. And that's one of the questions I always ask. Is there anything I shouldn't be allocating?
Right.
Right? Because then it puts their mind at ease. And like, even though there's probably nothing where it's like, yeah, it's a little iffy, at least then they're like, oh, this guy understands that
Right. Right.
there's proprietary stuff going on or whatever. And I think what your approach is probably the best way to do it. If you like now they're also like, hey, do you think is this possible? And instead you say like, hey, we'd like to feature you. You guys have some cool stuff. Is there
Right.
any way we can get in and be with someone?
Right.
Right? And at that point, a lot of times, a lot of them like they see it as an opportunity.
Sure.
Right? If they're
Yeah.
and they're
Great
like,
point.
well, yeah, hey, like we want to show you this widget, but we can't. But you know what? We can show you this that has shows people the same capabilities,
Right.
right? And almost pitching you is no, you are providing them marketing material as well.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely. Well, you are, and they're getting it for no money because your
right.
client is paying for their client to have this publicity.
Because I think, and more often than not, I always recommend this to a lot of my clients. It's like because with my clients, I provide them all the raw footage and everything else. But I always say like I recommend like, hey, if you were working with somebody, like let's send it to them too.
Good
Because
idea.
And then the back, I mean, obviously there's an opportunity for me then too. You're like, hey, remember I was in your shop? I can edit for you if you want.
Sure.
And there was one company down in an aerospace company down in Nebraska that I worked with. That's exactly what they called me up and they're like, hey, we want to rework this. Okay, perfect. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to. The cost of shooting is gone because
Right.
we got all the footage.
Right.
And then so then they had the raw footage. They could have done it themselves, but they called me up with an Indian and all that stuff. But yeah, just providing with that incentive, like, hey, this is a working opportunity for us, but it's also a good opportunity for you. And it's I don't remember who did something. There are a lot of business people, but who initially pushed the business idea that like it's not clients and the businesses, it's a partnership,
Hmm.
right? You work together to create these things, and what happens is in that symbiotic relationship that you have spurs out others. It's just sort of like I have a partnership with my clients, but there this customer that they had calls me up, hey, let's work together. All I have to do is as long as the client is okay with using the footage, yeah, let's do it. Like
Sure.
that's an opportunity for everybody to
Absolutely.
make better stuff. And it's a ideal opportunity for my client too, because then their stuff is getting out there again.
Yeah,
And
that's a particularly salient point because there's this evolution that I'm seeing where, originally everything was done by outbound sales, but it got harder with email and voicemail and everything else. Still works, still critical. You have to have salespeople that can cold call effectively and all of that, but it's harder. And then it was more inbound marketing, creating content, using SEO, having people come to your site, convert, fill out forms, raise their hand, let you know that they want to talk to you, and that's still important, still critical to do. But we're seeing with AI search and with content overload, there's some diminishing effectiveness of that, and so more and more there's this idea of partner sales, partner marketing, building partnership ecosystems, and to be able to speak of content creation in that partner context like that, I think that's brilliant. I think that's going to really start to resonate with people.
yeah, I mean it's kind of like it's the contemporary version of word of mouth marketing,
Sure,
right?
exactly.
Like
Yeah,
I mean, because so many of us like I mean, yes, we still go to trade shows, right? We all go to INTS and stuff, but like the shaking of hands doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to.
right.
Instead, that happens through things like ISLA or video or just floating around the internet. But at the same time, it's like, hey, I'm a supplier to aerospace companies, and there's an aerospace company that's using this machine.
Right,
Maybe we should do that too,
right,
And the
right.
next thing you're doing calls for, and I see that all the time in like specific area. Suppliers will end up getting the same equipment that the company that they're supplying, right? If
So,
they can
so,
afford it.
so you're bouncing all around. A lot of time on the road these days. What's the best airline?
Yes, 100% double it.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
yeah,
I used to
yeah,
be all United. I used to be 1K with Star Alliance and United, and now it's if I can fly Delta, I fly Delta.
yeah. 100%. I'm 3/4 of the way to a million miles, so
Wow.
we're getting there.
Got it. All right, let's bring this home. Try to give people some actionable takeaways. So, I'll ask kind of two different ways, and then you lay out there whatever you think is important. Number one, if you could give people a quick list of the right equipment for them to bring in house on a reasonable budget to start experimenting with video, what would it be? And number two, if they are struggling trying to figure out how to get going with video content, what's the best advice you can give them?
Yeah, okay. So, um, can I answer your question with what I say?
Okay.
What do you consider a reasonable budget when you talk equipment?
Well, so for the typical kind of company that we work with, let's say, 50 to $300 million, they probably spend $1 million a year on trade shows, maybe $50,000 a year on trade journal advertising, and that's the marketing budget. So, it's not 50% of revenue like a software company. Even 5% of revenue is a stretch. So they probably are thinking, 2,500, $3,000.
Sure. Okay. And my first reaction to that specifically would be take hardware out of that you can working with and throw it in a video at least for a year.
Hmm.
You'll see a difference. But but that moves like if you're running with a budget about 2 grand, um, if you buy uh either I'm hesitant, but I'm thinking diversity versus quality, right?
And if it's too tricky a question to answer, then don't go too far out on a limb. We can
No, no,
drop a
no, no,
link
that's
to an
okay.
article
So,
you have or something.
yeah, so what I would say is invest in like a little like a lavalier mic, which is
Okay.
a corded mic that clips on your lapel,
Right.
and a little recorder, right? That will you good enough quality audio that people aren't gonna click away from something because the audio is so terrible.
Right.
Um, Learn how to use them. And then from a camera perspective, to be honest with you, if you want to get the most diverse, but without spending a ton of money, get a couple GoPros because they not only look good, you can run them just off anything. You can use them for a standing shot like what we have right now as we're talking, but
Right.
you can also stick them in the machines. You can also, you can take them outside. You can bring them inside. You're so
Great answer. I was
diverse.
I was trying to figure out which digital SLR you would recommend. And there you go with GoPro. I didn't even think of that.
Well, and I'm shooting low budget, right?
Right.
So, if you're gonna be willing to one, because that's the other thing is the GoPro is simple, right?
Hmm.
It's a click and go,
Right.
right? And like I said, the other opportunity is that it's super durable networks, so you can throw it in machines. You don't worry about it breaking. They've been released for only a few $100. It's not. I literally have a budget for at least 3 of them every year
Hmm.
in my business because they're going in machine, coolant just eats away. Yeah, it's just a part of the business,
Right.
right? They're super diverse. If you're talking like the higher end camera, the DSLR essentially came out as a detachable lens. I have it. Sony or Canon are fantastic and they do great video and photos.
Okay.
Specific model numbers, I always get them all juxtaposed, so I'm not gonna throw out a specific model number. But if you're gonna spend money on a DSLR, I would say spend money for a full frame. Those are a key term that you'll find when you're looking for DSLRs.
Okay.
For a full frame and spend money on good glass because the glass will transfer between cameras. So if you
Hmm.
upgrade the body, you still have good glass. Pull one
Cool.
of those with decent glass and decent camera, you're probably looking 3 to 5 grand just for the camera. That doesn't include the tripod and everything else. That's
Right.
why I get GoPro or one of those what was it, a DJI Osmo because it's got a gimbal on it. Those are slick too. You can mount those in machines quite the same and waterproof, but they're great for like interviews and stuff like that.
Or the
If you've got
alternative
money,
is for somebody to call you, have you show up with your gear and let them watch what's going on. So how does somebody who's intrigued and wonders about working with Chris, how do they reach you?
yeah, I mean, the best way to reach me, I go to my website. It's just equalsbox.com. And then there's a little form there. But that goes right to my email. That's the easiest way. Emailing me cold is fine, but every once in a while, stuff gets pushed to junk. So that's why I always say, with the website, it's easier. Otherwise, LinkedIn too. Direct message me on LinkedIn because that is a place where it's easy to communicate and it's easy to go back and forth. That's you can explore what I do there too. It's all out there.
Even though you don't have
So.
time to post there anymore.
Yeah, well, you go back in the history, you plenty of
All right, this has been awesome, Chris. So wrap it up for us. What pearls of wisdom do you want to drop at the end to leave everyone just kind of sitting back in their seats and say, "Wow, I got to call this guy."
like honestly, I think the biggest thing is to not be afraid to take a risk and throw spending money on content can be difficult to justify. And I think that the biggest thing you can do, the best thing you can do is set aside 5, 10 grand 1 year, spend it. Just consider it long, but load on content, right? And that's a video or everything circle around it, and then see what happens.
Just get the
Because
thinner pad in your trade show booth, and there's your 10 grand, basically.
this is what I'm saying, right? Yeah, exactly. But that is there's so much opportunity, and even though there is that content fatigue, if you're needing space, you'll be welcome,
All right.
right? And I think that's where there's a lot of value that people are missing out on is that all you have to do is just create, right? Just start making it, and you get naked. And then when that opportunity grows, then you build the arsenal, right? Then you add more cameras, you hire more people, or you
Right.
gain more lights, whatever it is, right? But I think they can start making that content. And that's and that's where like I come in. There's a lot of people that I've worked with that I start with them, and then they see how I operate. We work together. They figure it out on their own, and then they call me for the big projects. Then that's the best. That's the best house calling I can have. So like, let's go in together. Let's start from scratch and figure this out. Cool. Now you know how to do it. You make stuff. When you want the big projects that are gonna shine somewhere else, let's do that together. You
That's
know,
a
that's
that's a great model. That's a great model.
yeah, and
Cool.
everyone succeeds then, right? Like that's the goal, right? And that's the thing too is there is so much business out there. Like that's what I scared me when I first broke out on my own. The business in manufacturing space is not a zero sum game. Like yes, you might have competition. Like if because competition is but they're not being launched because there is so much opportunity.
Yeah,
You
the
just need to
competition
find
in
it.
the industrial manufacturing space is a status quo.
Exactly. Exactly. Which and at that point, even if you realize about it, even just with some homemade janky videos, yeah, if you're gonna all of that, absolutely. But
Right.
like you'd be amazed if like all you have to do is get your name out there, and this is the way to do it. It's really
Right.
tough.
Cool. Well, this has been amazing, Chris. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise and your experiences and favorite bourbon after all that research. What's the best flavor?
But he's rare. And if I like in Court's popular, I had like 3 bottles of it. They cost me 20 bucks a pop, and now you can't find it anywhere. They're going to the black market for like 200.
Wow.
But Eagle Rare, that's the way to go. It's bullish.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure having you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.